I was actually saying the same thing.
Forests are embedded in Canada's social fabric. That's why we've renewed the vision for Canada's forests, which states, Canada's sustainable forest management practices maintain resilient, healthy forests that support vibrant communities, stronger collaborations with Indigenous peoples, and competitive economies. Together, we can make this vision a reality. Visit www.ccfn.org to download the new vision and learn more.
¿Sabe por qué Interempresas Media es la plataforma de difusión profesional número 1 en España? Por la potencia de su web interempresas.net con una difusión superior al 1.000.000 de visitantes mensuales. Por tener la feria virtual profesional más importante del mundo en lengua española, con más de 70.000 productos de 16.000 empresas expositoras. Por ser la mayor editora de prensa profesional del país, con más de 50 cabeceras sectoriales de prestigio. Por gestionar una base de datos con más de 460.000 profesionales registrados a cuyos correos electrónicos puede acceder de forma autorizada mediante email marketing. Por disponer de un equipo de más de 100 profesionales con una amplia experiencia en marketing de contenidos, segmentación de targets mediante cookies y gestión de redes sociales. Pero sobre todo, porque Interempresas Media ofrece campañas multimedia y multicanal adaptadas a las necesidades y presupuestos de cada empresa, siempre enfocadas a generar negocio. Compruébelo.
Buenos días, bienvenidos a la segunda jornada.
Good morning. Welcome to the second day of Egurtek. In this somewhat special version, the not in-person version, which we hope to get back to at the next edition. And my mission is to introduce today's speakers at the Egurtek Forum, and I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. My role is to collect the questions sent in via streaming in either English or Spanish and put the questions to the speakers. There are several presentations. Geographically, we're going to have one from Barcelona, one from Ireland, and another one from Chile. So the situations are different, and I think that the projects are extremely interesting, and we'll hope that there'll be questions to have a Q&A. So we're going to start with the first presentation from Barcelona, Pol Massoni, a collective of architects that I believe work in the area of Sants, a very interesting area near Montjuic. a conflictive area, and it's not easy to understand what a collective of architects is, copyright issues and others. I imagine Paul is their spokesperson, and he's going to explain two fairly exciting projects. One which has been a great interest because of the collective and innovative nature, and another project at the other end of Barcelona near Besòs, which I think is still at the design phase and which he's going to talk to us about. Go ahead, please. Good morning from Barcelona. I'd like to thank Egurtek for inviting us to participate at the conference today. And as you were saying, the idea today was to explain what we've learned since the LaBorda project starting in 2015 until the LaBalma project, which is currently under construction, and they are both a cooperative project. So lessons learned for cooperative and sustainable wood architecture. And this is our approach to the use of wood through the cooperative construction model. And it's a matter of bringing together two ways of building and understanding the world to close the cycle, wood from an environmental point of view and from a cooperative or economic point of view. As you were saying, LaBorda is near Montjuic, LaBalma is in Poblenou. And when LaBorda started, in 2015 or in 2017, when the construction work started, the LaBalma project started, and there were very clear lines of continuity. So LaBalma was a continuation of the work we had been previously carrying out. For us, the LaBorda project was a leap into the dark. We were just over 30, and it was the first family dwelling we built, almost 3,000 square meters, and it was a project where we were somewhat naive, and since we were young, we took that leap, and it was a bit of a crazy project. And 5 partners participated in LaBorda, and this enabled us to have a view as users, as part of the development, and also as architects. So this was a way of looking at the project and the construction process from different angles. And because we were so young, and I think it's important to emphasize that the team of architects and the work team we surrounded ourselves with were looking for experience. The project manager was Juan José Martínez, who had worked on a wood project here in Catalonia and several story buildings. And he was involved from the beginning in the project. Miguel Levado working on the structure, an expert all over Spain. Sociedad Orgánica as environmental consultants. They were also essential for the building to be made of wood with a low environmental impact. And regarding the budget and the project management, we had Daniel Wall and Chema, who have experience in the construction of social homes or council homes. And until then, very little had been built at the time in Barcelona. And we also mentioned the significant acoustic elements involved in these projects. The LaBorda project was a self-development project. And it involved this principle of self-development, which meant that the users were involved from the beginning of the project. And they were who decided to use wood in the project and to look for a different way of building. And there wasn't the usual struggle with the developer to take on a more risky and less conventional project. And this was very helpful to be able to put up the building. And another principle is community life, which means that the building is not just used as a dwelling. There are other aspects related to the wood structure. Sustainability obviously is one of the main issues, and at the conference the major advantages of wood have already been discussed regarding sustainability. Another principle is collective ownership. This enables us to work with an open infrastructure, and here the wood structure played an important role and an affordable role. Wood was very significant in making it possible to reduce the investment. It makes it possible to carry out cost reduction, and also makes it possible to work in phases and end up providing a high value structure. These are the users, the user participation from the beginning. They wanted to use wood. The uses included a community dwelling. And this involves areas such as energy issue with centralized energy systems. There's also the mobility issue. Finally, we did away with the underground car park. And we have health issues, domestic economy issues, a different way of thinking about the more classic dwelling. And these are elements that have been under discussion for many years. This doesn't mean less for us, it means more. It's a way of gaining more community space that can provide much greater amenities than if you just work with independent cells. And this is means that we've gone from 28 washing machines to just 2 washing machines for the whole building. And here we also have an economic saving and a reduction in the direct environmental impact. Reducing the private spaces that need privacy and comfort 24 hours a day, and this has been partly replaced by common areas such as the laundry area or dining areas that mean fewer requirements. And here we had a shared laundry area, dining area. And this also made it possible to reduce or do away with the car park. This was obligatory according to the regulations in Barcelona, but the ordinance was changed for the city to reduce the number of obligatory parking spaces for dwellings. The regulations were 40 years old, and so often happens, regulations change much more slowly than society does. And there are contradictions. You may be trying to design a building with a very low environmental impact made of wood, reducing CO2 emissions to 200 kilos per square meter and putting your stakes on innovative material. And on the other hand, you may have the obligation of having one or two story basements to be used as a car park, which means that to park a car, you're going to have a much higher environmental impact than the savings you're achieving up top. So this is a key issue, and there isn't an underground car park in either one of the projects. And we have a good public transport system in the city. And it's also possible to park in other areas, which means that they don't need to take the car home. So often we design a wooden structure, but we have a fairly contradictory environmental impact and a CO2 emission level below ground. We probably wouldn't have been able to build the wooden building if we'd had to build that compulsory parking area. And we're also talking about social dwellings, people that can barely afford a home. And the cost of a vehicle in Barcelona is approximately 7 euros a week without even using it, without the cost of petrol. Obviously, this is a very high cost, and we're often not aware of this, that in our social dwelling projects, we may be generating a dual difficulty. If we make it easier for people to own a car, this is an individual decision, obviously, but we can provide a disincentive to own a car and provide incentives for the use of more sustainable means of transport. These are the environmental parameters and goals we established. And regarding material, it was important to build a wooden structure which has approximately 50% of the impact. And this was a key decision because we had few resources or limited resources. So we decided to use those resources in the infrastructure through the cooperative to provide a direct impact compared to other materials, much more conventional materials. And the impact reduction was very significant, around 50% of the material impact compared to other materials used for the facade, for the paving, which wouldn't have allowed for this 50% reduction without the use of wood for this project. And regarding environmental strategy, the building is over 28 meters deep, and this meant that a large central patio was required. And this patio was roofed over with light greenhouse metal structure, according to the environmental consultants, in order to provide an atrium that can be used in both summer and winter, with a warm temperature in winter. And we made use of the fact that the building was facing south, and we concentrated more than 80% of the dwelling surface. And they practically use no heating during the whole winter because of that. We also maximized the height of the building to 3.03 meters in order to make the most of that free sunshine. And we had abundant glazing on that south facade. While the north facade that faces the street with more noise, we reduced the number of dwellings on that side. And this was the multi-purpose area. It was left as a collective space for all kinds of uses with a low performance level. So this is the summer and winter approach. In winter, closing the roof to make the most of sunlight, with a low need for heating along the south facade, which is catered for with small radiators. And on the north facade, in the 4 dwellings we have on that side, we improved the insulation through the carpentry work design, and their heat demand is 10 times higher because they don't have the benefits of sunshine during the winter. We used wooden blinds on the south facade, and cross ventilation was maximized, with no active measures for summer, just the possibility of fitting ceiling fans to provide 3 or 4 degrees more comfort. On the ground floor, the building, as we see later on, is clearly separated with 2 types of structures, a concrete structure. For us, it was important to recognize this public area and to differentiate it from the material of the structure. And this enabled us to deal with damp issues, fire resistance issues. We have a fire resistance requirement of 120, which isn't a problem with wood and with the suitable wood coatings. We always try to reduce the number of layers because of cost issues. And here, with concrete, with outlining, with that we could obtain the necessary performance. And this plinth makes it more resistant for this public area that was going to be connected to a future public park and a cooperative store. Then the stairwell, the lift connects the street with the future park. And these vanes are related to the wooden structure. In this case, The bearing walls are perpendicular to the facade. These are improvements we made later, bearing the structure more on the facade, and this means that there are practically no compartments, and the rest of the partitions are designed by the users themselves according to their own needs. The building was completed and was ready to hand over to the cooperative. We have only 120 CLT thanks to these small veins of 360. We use the necessary coatings to provide fire resistance and also acoustic insulation with gypsum plaster to provide that acoustic insulation. And the wooden structure or insulating with wood in the rear area didn't make a significant contribution. But the design included sound insulation and airtightness, which we included also in the LaBalma project. And here we see the overall building design. We can see the perpendicular walls and the dimensions of the ironwork. And here we worked with Egurtek. The control you can have over a project with a wooden structure compared to a concrete or metal structure. And this means that you have greater control over the project phase. And here we can see the walls, these perpendicular walls I mentioned earlier, and the vertical core that was completely prefabricated and fitted, and this meant that the stairwell was already included in the construction process as it started to rise from the beginning. This is a typical section of the building where we only have 21 centimeters in the ironwork. These is one of the important elements, where we took quite a risk and we tried to provide the minimum cost solution to provide the necessary performance. It was a very economic solution. And we can also see that central roofing that provides protection to the wood. It protects against rain, and the patio is a closed area where there's no rainfall and protected from the weather, providing a complete covering for the wooden structure, because it's important for us for the wood to be visible, and using wood as a final finish, using the characteristics of wood as a construction system. We wanted the wood to be visible. And this is a concrete slab of 7 centimeters on an insulation layer, which is completely separate from the CLT structure. And here some pictures of the project with the amount of wood used in the overall building. And this is an early visit from the participants in the project, the users. This is one of the advantages of using wood. After just a few months' work, you can get an idea of what the building and the dwelling will look like. And it's also true that this was a problem later on, because the users then had the impression that it was taking a long time to finish in the end. But overall, it is an advantage. And here we can see the entire structure and how it's installed in 2 phases. And here, from the first panels installed on the left, we have the concrete slab on the ground floor, the thermal insulation and the paving, and the concrete paving. After placing the concrete.
Although it is true that you go from completely dry structure, and what you do is go back to a much more humid kind of construction in this particular case. And this is the finished building. It's been in operation for a couple of years. It has commercial premises on the ground level, and it's the public area. And the wooden structure was left visible, and there's a transparency towards the multifunctional space as well as the patio where you could see the wood, and it's a much warmer space compared to the external part that is much more industrial and much colder. And we believe that that was an interesting contrast that had to be developed. And then the ground floor, this atrium, which is the patio or the yard. In green, you can see the walls are protected by plaster as a fireproofing protection. And some walls, as we'll see later on, they serve to reinforce the structure. And this is the multi-purpose space up on the first floor with a northern orientation. And here at the upper levels, we can see how these reinforcement panels can be seen from the patio, and which provide the finishing touches with these panels. All of these windows and all of the doors are made of glass. So there are no barriers between the public and private spaces. These are the dwellings. Although the panel can be seen on the ceiling, and plaster was used on the walls. Always in the central section with the bathrooms and the kitchens, and each person designed the flat as they preferred it to be or would preferred it to look like. And these are members of the cooperative. So they've been living there for a long time, and you can, well, there's a difference compared to flats owned by younger people that are much more empty. And the kitchens are in a different location. And these are the results of the first year. After we performed the monitoring, we did some temperature readings, and the temperature was maintained in the southern-looking flats between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. And the heating was only connected one day when Gloria was blowing. However, on the northern side of the building, which is the green line, in this case, the heating was supposed to kick in as from 18 degrees Celsius. And that's where the heating system was used more. But we've managed to achieve a significant reduction of emissions in the building. And here we have some of the real consumption figures compared to the technical code, or what the technical code has to say. And this project carried out in Poblenou, this is another cooperative, and in this case it was a bigger distance because the Xusta Civic Cooperative, and we had a tendering process based on the LaBorda experience for cooperatives, together with teams of architects and economists for development purposes. It's in Poblenou, which is a location under transformation that is very close to the Avenida La Diagonal, one of the main streets. And here we had the same collaborators. It's a building with 20 dwellings and something like 1,200 square meters. And it's currently under construction, and we want to finish the building next year in 2021. And here we are also cooperating with the La Boqueria Cooperative and Architect's Office. It's on the road to Valencia, and it has all kinds of amenities in that avenue. And it closes one of the blocks of flats there. And that made us think about how important vertical circulation was. And we connected this to this other section here that's much more public, with different kinds of public amenities. And well, that's when this school was built, which is next door, which is right next to our building. So these are the different strategies. On the one hand, the wooden structure, well, that was very clear from the very beginning, and it was one of the main elements for the tendering process. And we also repeated the concrete base as well as the wooden structure. And in this part of the nucleus, well, there was a slight variation during the basic project phase. We included community spaces there, like this filter between the more public and the more private space. And then we have the walkways. They were located on the ground floor level. And other walkways were installed on the other side of the building at a higher level. That was an important thing from the very beginning of the project, because it brought about a change in the structure in the top section. And as regards typologies, that was pretty similar to what was done in the previous project, although with some slight variations and improvements. And these are the details that explain the nucleus and what it looks like. And this is the picture, or it's a simplified picture, and this is the basic execution project, where you can see the change. You can see the walkways in the top segment and the access walkways to the dwellings, and on the other side of the building, we have other walkways. And this is the more public part of the building, which is linked to community spaces and to the vertical staircase too. And on the ground floor, we have the local premises, And the community space, like in the LaBorda project, this served as a filter. We wanted to have a more public and pedestrianized area, and we have this community space with this outer space, which is the first element that serves as a filter when you enter the building. And then on the upper floors, this nucleus, this core that I mentioned previously, that is also an irregular element, but the regulations were very strict about this, which is where we place the axis nucleus with an open staircase, so it's open to the exterior, and then the lift, together with the community spaces of each floor, and the dwellings, and in this case, the structure was always in the perimeter. So there's an intermediate structure here. So there's a complete separation between the flats and the wooden panels. It's 14 meters from one facade to the other. So this is how we managed to separate the wooden structure, because the panels, there was a separation between the dwellings, and this allows you to achieve an acoustic improvement where we, compared to the previous project, we used a completely different system. And because of the noise, there was a certain amount of discomfort, especially when there are elements hanging from the ceiling, or things like curtains. And then the facade, the internal access facade, without a structure, which allowed us to perform this operation on the ground floor and on the upper floors too. So the wooden structure was maintained along the vertical axis of the facade. So, and here, this structure, this is where the bathrooms and the kitchens were located, that always concentrate or focus on this central section, with variations depending on each dwelling and depending on the user's needs. And this is a cross-section where you can see some of the details. You can see the CLT panels. We have some larger spaces of 5.20. The CLT panel was 160. And from an acoustic perspective, or here in Barcelona, performance was improved between one project and another. And apart from the technical code, we also improved the layering system, as we'll see later on. And in this case, we used a special structure, as well as Douglas pine wood from France. It's 14-meter panels running from one facade to the other. And as I mentioned before, these are two U's that are separated from each other for acoustic issues, to improve the acoustics of the dwellings. And I think that you can see the U system in place, as well as the facade structure with the vertical apertures when it's we're dealing with the rooms, and with large spans reducing the structure, and also cladding whenever walkways had to be installed. And this is the top section, or the top level of the building. You can see how we applied some rotation there for adjustment purposes. And from a constructive perspective, the facade, as you saw before in the case of LaBorda, it's made of galvanized sheeting with a ventilated facade. And as regards the flooring, we had up to 17 centimeters, which was practically double compared to LaBorda, with more layers of material. And obviously costs were higher, of course, but in any case we had a much better acoustic performance. And then internally, because of fire issues and because of acoustic issues, we provided plasterboard cladding for the wood. And as you'll see, the facades, apart from having a plasterboard, they also incorporated radiating system, Well, this is the flooring, the details of the flooring during the construction phase. And this is the building, the picture we saw before, which has a concrete base that is very similar to the LaBorda project, and it became much more public. And this is a picture from the other side with the walkways. And you can clearly see, well, this is these U's that I mentioned before. We provided a separation between the U's and the staircase, which is also another important element as occurred in the LaBorda building. And well, the upper floors open up to reach the roofing, and there's a skylight there that provides much more light. These are the facades with walkways where you can see how the construction work was carried out, and they are pretty open. And provided a beautiful structure, and this allowed us to reduce the consumption of wood. And it's a building that is easier to transform, and the only rigid part is the central section, so it has many multi-purpose spaces on each side of the building. And this is with the flooring installed, or this is during the installation phase, rather. With the dwelling that runs all the way to the facade. And here we have some more pictures of this week's visit. You can see the insulation material on the facade. And together, we also had to install the heating system for the dwellings, for the apartments. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Paul. Congratulations on your work. Congratulations on being so audacious. And I would just like to ask you 3 questions that have arrived online. There are 2 elements. Well, one of the questioners is very interested in management issues. So how are these cooperatives set up? It's asked by Luis Diaz. Is it done bottom up, or do they try to find a top-down manager? But then I have another question, and that is the pros and cons of the cooperative model. And how can you prevent a cooperative from becoming a protection device for classic developers that no longer risk their money? Well, how can you set up a cooperative? I think that there are 2 possibilities to do this that I mentioned previously, and in the case of LaBorda. Well, the project kicked off in 2012 when there were no references available in Spain. So the cooperative project unfolded very quickly, and this cooperative is much bigger, and it's done quite a few projects. It has nearly 1,000 partners. We also do all the development work, but there's a technical team involved too that participated in the town council's tendering process. But we work with La Fundación La Dinamo, and we've implemented both strategies. And we think that the bottom-up proposals are excellent, although there are certain constraints too, as regards time, resources, and also because many times we are very demanding with users, And we are working on a project in Manresa and also one in the city of Barcelona. And there are other projects that have been carried out bottom up, but we are also initiating projects where the cooperative is set up in parallel to the group of partners. And it's an important issue because it's essential to understand that these are cooperatives that are going to survive over the years, and that the value as a cooperative, what they focus on is property and management, and that's going to last to 75 or 100 years. And this is where we have the cooperative value, apart from development, of course, which is obviously a necessary tool if the building has not been made, or if you have to refurbish it, or if you need to do something on public soil. But not like classical promotion or classical development, which was the basis for the cooperative movement. But here the base is, well, you have to share ownership and management too, management actions at a later stage. So I think that there's a change of scale here, because it might be that development is initiated by the cooperative or by some management body, but what is a key element in any case is that there be proper training for the members of the cooperative, because it's these members that are going to manage anything connected to developing projects. But above all, we mustn't forget about how the building is to be managed at later stages. And then the second question is the pros and cons of this system. Well, we think that there are many advantages as regards the model itself. It changes things completely, because the fact that there's a collective ownership means that the cooperative is, well, gives the dwelling to a partner. There's no intermediation, there's no external intermediary involved. And you have the possibility of enjoying that flat, and if you don't need it anymore, or if there are changes in your life, you just give it back to the cooperative. And we believe that that is a big advantage from a project perspective too. So either in the initial phases or perhaps at a later stage, this allows users to adapt the project so it can meet the needs of people, of the current users and future users. And although this might seem that it's a difficulty for architects, but I think this goes beyond that scope. And buildings survive over the years, and I think that it's very beneficial, and especially in those countries where there's a long-standing tradition. The evolutions that these projects undergo are extremely interesting, and there's this possibility of having more participation and deeper entrenchment of partners and users with the project. That's a very powerful thing. And well, inconveniences. Well, there's the economic issue because of the issue of guarantees or collective ownership, and also because of some cultural issues too, because we are totally in favor of buying flats in this country, and it's very difficult to do away with that kind of trend and to change our mindset completely. And this is, well, one of the constraints, of course. And I think that this is one of the limitations, and that we have cultural limitations too, because you know that our Western culture has avoided all kinds of responsibilities so that others can provide these basic elements for your life. So this means that people have to take decisions now with this, and they have to face a risk, and this is also a cultural limitation too nowadays. Well, thank you very much. Well, we would spend the entire morning with you, really, because I think that you mentioned this at the beginning. The issue of constructive details, one of the biggest concerns has to do with acoustics, which is what fundamentally prevents you from making a completely dry building. I'm going to summarize these questions very quickly, and I think you explained this pretty clearly, but the interesting thing would be to use the dry technique. But due to the technical code, you cannot only use dry materials or wood. I think that that's where the future lies. Oh, yes, it is true. And there are possibilities of using dry materials, but from the cost perspective, nowadays, well, and from our point of view, it has been impossible to be able to incorporate this to the project. That is only using dry materials. And there are acoustic solutions for vertical floorings. There's no problem with that with those. But if we were to take into account other elements like CO2 or waste, material waste, apart from acoustic issues, well, this is something that we've experienced. This is something that we saw at LaBorda. There's a very noisy street outside. It's terrible. And there's nothing mentioned in the regulations. But we have to provide insulation between neighbors with insulation that is much more intense than what we've been using until now. But there's a debate on this issue. That is, if for those buildings with a low environmental impact, and if solutions are based on wood, should they or would they be able to meet the insulation requirements, these major requirements that are being imposed? But this is a debate with environmental consultants, because that means that you have to place lots of material on the flooring, a significant amount of material on the flooring, and that this has an environmental impact, of course. And this produces a number of contradictions sometimes when you have flooring that has layers of 17 centimeters or more. In other words, that's thicker than the structure itself. And we have, because of weight reduction issues and spans, we've reduced the weight and the amount of space of the structure. And we've applied more flooring. Okay, thank you very much, Paul. We'll be paying close attention to see how these experiences finish. And well, all the very best. And let's only hope that your projects will grow more in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.